From the Ancient, from the Gospel of Luke 24. Now that same day, 2 of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him.
He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?"
They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?"
"What things?" he asked.
"About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the 3rd day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find the body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it was just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus."
Jesus said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets had spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself.
As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he were going farther, but they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening, the day is almost over." So Jesus went in to stay with them.
When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and then he disappeared from their sight.
They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11, and those with them assembled together and saying, It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the 2 told what had happened on the way, and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread.
While they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you troubled? And why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones as you see I have." When he said this, he showed them his hands and feet. And while they still did not believe it, because of joy and amazement, he asked them, "Do you have anything to eat here?" And they gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence.
Here ends the gospel reading.
On thy wondrous works I will meditate. From Psalm 145, as interpreted by Mary Oliver. Every morning I want to kneel down on the golden cloth of the sand and say some kind of musical thanks for the world that is happening again, another day. From the shawl of the wind coming out of the west to the firm green flesh of the melon lately sliced open and eaten, its chill and ample body flavored with mercy. I want to be worthy of what? Glory? Yes, unimaginable glory. O Lord of melons, of mercy, though I am not ready, not worthy, I am climbing toward you.
Well, we are a resurrection story ourselves here today, aren't we? I always think of that Hollywood movie, and I can't remember which one it was, but it was the kind of golden oldie that I used to watch really late at night when I was babysitting around this time of year. And in this one, it's like an old Bible, one of those big, Cecil B. DeMille Bible epics. So in this one scene, I remember Jesus is visiting his friends Mary and Martha, whose brother Lazarus has died. And they're very upset, and they basically say to Jesus, "Where were you? If you had been here, this wouldn't have happened." Jesus wept. It's the shortest verse in the Bible. And he raises Lazarus, and in the movie, Lazarus comes out into the light, and he really doesn't look so good. You know what I mean? He's like not so sure about all this. And right now, in 2022, I feel like I can relate to that a little bit. This is our first Easter together for 2 years, together in body as well as in spirit. This is the first time we've lit candles of hope and healing for 2 years. And I feel a little unsteady on my feet. We've been through a lot. We're going through a lot. Things are still uncertain. I mean, life is uncertain as it is. But you add a pandemic into the mix. So that's how the world works, and that's why we love resurrection stories. But coming back to life can be hard, a difficult adjustment, blinking into the strong light of a new day. The Easter story is about a whole community, a network of relationships and gossip and news about what happened to Jesus. You can hear them in the gospel stories we just heard out of Luke. He was put to death. He died. Were you there? I was there. It was terrible. I was with his friends. I saw his mom. Did you know some of them got arrested? Yes, they're under some suspicion. Some of them are even denying that they knew him. Devastation. A lot of tears. A sense of a wrecked dream, of failure for his community of followers, having been crushed yet again by the military powers of the Roman Empire. But then the women go to the tomb on Sunday morning to prepare Jesus for burial. In the first century Palestine, in the Jewish religion, this is what women do. And he's not there. There are different accounts about what happened, but here's the gossip again, here's the news. Someone said there was an angel, but it looked like Jesus? I don't know. He said, don't touch me when Mary of Magdala reached out for him. Was he a spirit? What was going on? Yeah, I don't believe that. That's impossible. The women are just overwrought. And so we continue the story on the road to Emmaus. And somebody remembers Cleopas and I were walking. And this is crazy. You won't believe it. We were discussing the scriptures. And then this guy started discussing the scriptures with us. And it's hard to explain, but we didn't know who it was. But then we invited him to eat with us. And when he blessed the bread and broke it to share with us, suddenly we saw it was Jesus. I know it sounds crazy. This is so familiar right now, I think. So deeply familiar, this process of a community sharing shocking news. Testing our truth together. Trying to make sense of things. So this virus is so contagious, you can get it by touching someone. You can get it from walking by someone on the Linway, out jogging. No, you don't need to wear a mask. Yes, you do need to wear a mask. Well, if you're wearing a mask, why do I need to wear a mask? Because my wearing a mask protects you. What did Dr. Fauci say today? What did the conspiracy theories say? It's the same kind of community turmoil. We have known how to stay apart, but we are not always sure how to come back together. There is fear and anxiety, not just for myself, but what if I infect you? And what if you don't know it and then you infect someone else? So we have developed this really sharp awareness of how we are truly connected and interconnected, what kind of ripple effect my choice has on the larger community. If I go to a hockey game or a birthday party, I take all these other people with me. All this time, my friends, if we wanted evidence of how truly our ties run deeply, even with people that we will never meet, what a painful and ironic way to earn that awareness. This is how we keep each other going, by sharing experiences, by validating them or challenging them. Could this be right? Do you think this makes sense? Because nothing happens to just one of us. Nothing that happens to just one of us. If there is an encounter with the holy, if there is an encounter with the dreadful, it doesn't happen to just one of us. We are learning this better and better across human history, and we are learning that what happens to us also happens to the earth. Jesus, the beloved teacher, the rabble-rousing peacemaker, the radical, the rabbi, dies. Everyone sees it, but then he lives. A few see it, and then more see it, and more, and it changes the world. He appears to his women friends at the tomb, and he appears to his men friends on the road. He causes alarm, consternation, confusion, shock. All of these things are understandable responses to his showing up again, manifesting, incarnating. What is he trying to do? What is God trying to do? What is the divine creative force trying to do with this? Trying to do through him? Well, our Unitarian and Universalist theological traditions respond by saying, well, this is God making a statement on behalf of love's power over violence. Our tradition responds by saying that God loves the world so much that this first community of traumatized followers of this prophet of Nazareth was filled with joy to replace their fear, and that they found confidence to move into history proclaiming thereafter a resurrection faith. How do we live it? Do we study doctrine and metaphysics and theology and philosophy, trying for instance, figure out if the resurrection narrative is closer to Plato or to the Zoroastrian religion, which definitely was a big influence on the Jewish faith community at this time? Or does it come from Jewish theology about the resurrection of the body? I mean, we could do that. It's an interesting subject, and there are very interesting studies about it. But that's not how we live a resurrection life. We live it. We live it in community. Note this. Jesus doesn't appear again on Easter morning and make one-on-one visits. He is experienced as alive by a group of women doing sacred work, ministry to the dead. He is experienced as alive by spiritual friends discussing sacred texts while traveling to be with more spiritual friends. He is experienced as alive by community. And as the community gathers around to stare and to tremble, Jesus shows them that he is fine, he is okay, he is whole, despite his wounds that remain on his hands and feet visibly. And then he asks them an essential question. What's for lunch? You heard it. Do you have anything to eat? What's for lunch? So they give him broiled fish. And I love that detail that comes down to us from thousands of years ago. Of course, this detail is provided by the gospel author to prove his point that Jesus was really literally alive and eating solid food. He wasn't a ghost or an apparition, not a figment of anyone's imagination. And also fish because the disciples were fishermen. Fish because they lived on the sea. And the sea was the primordial element upon which Jesus walked and which he calmed when it was beset by a storm, and upon which he was rocked in a little boat when he had a nap after a long day. Great Mama Ocean, the sea. In the first centuries of Christian history, when little groups of Jesus followers didn't have any official doctrine yet, but were hiding and meeting in houses, they had rituals that they did again and again that kept their community together, that reminded them of who they were. And one of those rituals was the one that many of you know as communion. But rather than the bread and wine that you may have taken part in, what they shared in that early century was bread and fish. That was the first Eucharistic practice. It was bread and fish. This commemorated not only the miracle feeding of 5,000 people with just a few loaves and fish as reported in the gospel, but it also commemorated that post-resurrection meal, that essential act of community, sharing what nourishes us, feeding one another. I wrote this piece, Being the Resurrection, some years ago, and I share it with you now. The stone has got to be rolled back from the tomb again and again every year. Roll up your sleeves. He is not coming back, you know. He is not coming back unless it is we who rise for him, who lay healing hands on the reviled and rejected like he did, on his behalf. We who rage for righteousness in his insistent voice. We who love the sinner, even knowing that the sinner is no farther off than our own heartbeat. He will not be back to join us at the table to share the extravagant banquet, God's love feast. All are invited, come as you are. And so it is you and I who must feast for him, must say the grace and break the bread and pass it to the left and dish up the broiled fish or pour the wine and pass it to the right and treat each other, each one so tenderly as though just this morning he or she or they made the personal effort to make it back from heaven. Or from hell, but certainly from death, to be by our side. Because if by some miracle, and why not a miracle, he did come back, wouldn't he want to see us like this? Wouldn't it be a miracle to live for just one day so that if he did, by some amazing feat, come riding into town, he could take a look around and say, this is what I meant. And we could say, it took us a long time, but we finally figured it out. Oh, let us live to make it so. You are the resurrection and the life.